What if you could ask a doctor anything you wanted? Like, is becoming a doctor really worth it? Well, I gave that opportunity to my subscribers this month in my first ever AMA, Ask Me Anything. I printed out hundreds of your questions from my recent YouTube and IG posts, and I'll be answering a few of them at random in this video today. I have nothing prepared, no script, just honest, vulnerable answers. If you're new around here, my name is Jake Goodman. I'm a psychiatry resident doctor. I'm in my second year of residency, so that means I'm almost halfway done my residency training. I make videos like this where I share the truth about what life is actually like as a doctor. And in today's video, I'm answering all of your questions, plus a very important question: is becoming a doctor worth it? From my honest opinion. And I'm gonna be answering that question at the end of this video, so stay tuned. If you like this video, awesome. Please subscribe. Let me know what kind of videos you want to see in the comment section below. And if you don't like this video, no worries, just keep on scrolling, and thanks for stopping by. So after I printed out all of your questions, I cut them all up and my mom and I threw them in a Santa hat. So I'm gonna reach my hand in and it will be a surprise which one I choose. All right, so we're gonna get started here. I'm gonna choose a question at random. This one says, what surprised you the most about transitioning from being a med student to being a resident? And what can a fourth year med student do to prepare for that transition? Whew, that's a great question. The transition from medical school to residency is brutal. There is no other way to say it. You go from being a student with a little bit of responsibility, but nowhere near the responsibility that you are about to acquire, because once you start residency, you are a doctor. You're an MD, you're a DO, you are a physician, and you are treating patients, and patients' lives are on the line. Of course, you have support by, other residents and attendings, but there is nothing that prepares you for that other than just getting in there, diving in the deep end, and doing it. And to be quite honest with you, I'm about halfway done my residency now, and only over the last couple months have I started to feel really comfortable. Not super comfortable, but comfortable enough treating patients that I don't feel inadequate. And you may feel inadequate for your first year as a resident, and that is totally normal and expected. So my advice is just jump in the deep end, be okay with inadequacy, be okay with learning. That's what you're there for. And make mistakes, that happens, be okay with that and learn from them. All right, great question. Next up, we've got, have you met good doctors who have mental health issues like bipolar, depression, and OCD? This is a great question. Yes, without a doubt, yes. Myself, I've experienced depression. I would say I'm a good doctor. At least I try to be. I know many doctors that have experienced a plethora of mental health issues, from depression to anxiety to bipolar, OCD, PTSD. People share these things with me because I'm very open about my mental health struggles. But what I think you'll see once you're in the field is that many people do not ever talk about that. It's very taboo to talk about, although it's becoming more and more acceptable to talk about mental health. You can be a doctor and have a mental illness. 100%. I promise you, I've seen it a million times. If you get treatment, if you do the things that you need to do to stay on top of your mental health, absolutely you can be a doctor. I'm living proof of it. Tips for matching into your desired specialty, or interview tips. I'll give you an interview tip. I just got done with my interviews a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago at this point, for residency, so at least it's a little bit fresh in my head. You need to convince the program, whether you're applying to medical school, residency, whatever you're applying for, you need to convince that program that you want to go there and you have a strong desire to go there, and you know more about that program than the other applicants do. You need to go on their website. You need to go scroll through every aspect of that program's website so you know more than the interviewer knows. I remember when I interviewed for med school, it was like do or die. I only had maybe 3 interviews total. I had to nail it. I spent hours on that website. So when it came down to the actual interview, I was so prepared. I mentioned multiple clubs and organizations that medical school had. When I'm applying to residency, the dream residency programs I was applying to, I already knew who was in the residency, what kind of rotations were available. I wasn't asking obvious questions on my interview day. I was asking questions about things that I had really looked into, and I wanted to know the nitty-gritty about different organizations and different opportunities. So know the program almost better than they know the program, and that will show the interviewer that you have immense interest in the program. It worked for me, it'll work for you. All right, we're gonna keep going. What kept you motivated despite the setbacks you've had? Great question. I mean, I've had a lot of setbacks. I was denied by 25 medical schools before I got into medical school. It took me 2 years to get in. I took the MCAT twice. I even failed my driver's test twice. It took me 3 times to get my license. Keep that between us. Just kidding. I mean, I've failed a million times. I've failed tests before. I didn't think I would be able to get to where I'm at now multiple times, but I kept going, and I knew that I wanted to be a doctor since I was 5 years old, and I wasn't gonna let any failure or any setback prevent me from living out my dream of being a doctor. There is not a doctor or really any successful person out there who hasn't failed. Everybody has failed. Not everybody will talk about it, but everybody has failed. So know that failure is part of the journey. I know that sounds a little bit cliche, but it's the truth. If you can just know that if you're failing, that's part of it. And if you're failing, that means you're going for something that's really hard and really difficult and not everyone can do. So that means you're on the right path. Keep going. Try a second time. Try a third time. I would have applied to 25 more medical schools and been denied if that's what it took. I would have never stopped. I would have never quit. And you shouldn't either. These are great questions. Really great questions so far. There's so many in here. Okay. Why is mental health so overlooked in undergrad, and why can't family understand? I'll tackle that first question here because it's a little too much to do both of these questions, but why is mental health so overlooked in undergrad? Well, I think it's becoming more and more talked about and recognized compared to when I went to college, 2011. I think there's a culture in undergrad and in med school and really any sort of school in general where it's very competitive and everyone wants to, do their best and, get the best grades. And if you're in undergrad and you're pre-med, you want to be a doctor, you really have to outcompete other people. Sometimes it's like a weed out process where 100 people will enter a course and 60 people will pass it. I mean, that kind of stuff exists. I've seen it. I've been there. And so I think people don't talk about mental health, and mental health becomes overlooked because we are so hyper-focused on success and grinding and studying and working, and sometimes at the cost of our own mental health. And it's been a journey for me to realize, wait a minute, grinding nonstop all day long is not good for my mental health. I need to take breaks. Your brain is like a muscle. You can't just continue to work nonstop. You have to give it breaks. You have to allow it time to rest. And that's something that I've learned over the years. And I think you can take that approach with you for your mental health in undergrad and know that working hard is super important. Getting good grades is super important, but so is resting. So is making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure your diet is good, making sure you have connections with people in your life, making sure you know yourself. And knowing yourself is different for everybody. It could be therapy, it could be meditation, it could be exercise, just spend time with yourself, and at times you may need to go see a doctor. That's what we're here for. And don't be afraid to do so. One of my favorite resources throughout medical school and residency has been Picmonic. Basically, half of the medical knowledge in my brain comes from cartoon sketches. I'm not even kidding. It's actually amazing. Studies have shown that mnemonics are one of the best ways to learn and retain information. And Picmonic offers so much more than just cartoon mnemonics. They have built-in quizzes after each video so you can make sure that you cement the new information that you just learned. Honestly, if it wasn't for Picmonic, I don't think I would have been able to memorize some of the most difficult concepts on the USMLE, the United States Medical Licensing Exam, especially the Step 1 exam, like the glycogen storage and lysosomal storage disorders. Honestly, I would never have been able to memorize them if it wasn't for Picmonic, so thank you, Picmonic. Picmonic is now partnered with TrueLearn, which provides one of the best question banks to use in med school. When I say question bank, it's more like a smart bank. TrueLearn smart banks combine high quality exam style practice questions which prepare you for the boards, as well as analytics to see how you're doing compared to your peers, and Picmonic videos integrated into the review process. Basically, it helps you guide your learning and increases your performance on these brutal exams. If you want to reduce stress in school while boosting your performance on these exams, head over to the description of this video and you will see my code which you can use to try out the TrueLearn Smart Bank with Picmonic. Good luck. Hey, Dr. Jake, I'm a third-year med student, 22 years old. Perhaps the biggest issue I'm facing in med school is imposter syndrome. I feel you. 3 years in, and I still feel like I don't deserve to be studying this. Both of my parents are surgeons and very accomplished in life, but they did this all on their own. Also, they pay for my tuition because student loans aren't really a thing in my country. So compared to them, I feel like I haven't accomplished. I know where this question is going. Imposter syndrome, look, we all feel it. No, not everyone will admit to feeling it, but I felt it for sure. I went to University of
Georgia for college. I came up to Jefferson where I went to med school and felt like, wow, these people are some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And what am I doing here? Maybe I'm not smart enough. And sometimes you feel like you don't belong and that there's been some sort of mistake and that you tricked them or something like that. I mean, that's normal to feel that way. I'll tell you, for me, what worked with imposter syndrome is I saw the objective results. I studied hard for a test. I worked hard. I got a grade that I'm proud of. And that didn't happen every time. Let me be completely clear and transparent here. That did not happen every time. But when it did, I'm like, yo, I got an 87 on this test that I studied 300 hours for. That's pretty good. I belong here, just like anybody else here. To remind yourself of those objective results. You got into medical school. You're pursuing your dream of becoming a doctor. You are not an imposter. You belong here. So for me, it was the objective things. Remind yourself of that, and hopefully that can help. Quick H2O break. How did you know that you wanted to be a psychiatrist? Originally, I wanted to be a plastic surgeon. Wanted to become a doctor when I was younger. I wanted to be a plastic surgeon. I thought it'd be really cool to, help improve people's lives and well-being by fixing areas of their body that they wanted to be fixed. Helping out burn victims. And what I realized is the second I walked into the OR was not a place for me. OR, operating room. The operating room was scary, dark, cold, and I wasn't able to pee for hours on end, and it was very uncomfortable. It was sterile. It wasn't for me. There was no communication with the patient. I'm sure they have outpatient clinics and stuff like that, but I want to talk to my patient. It wasn't for me. I learned that pretty quickly. Then I wanted to be an ophthalmologist. I thought for a while it would be really cool to help people see. It would be cool to be on the cutting edge of macular degeneration and cataracts and glaucoma. Then I did my ophthalmology rotation and found that I didn't really have a lot of passion for it. I found psychiatry sort of by accident. It was my first rotation of med school, and funny enough, I had only sort of ruled out two specialties coming into med school, OBGYN and psychiatry. And I ended up getting into psychiatry residency. So how did that work out? Basically, I loved seeing people turn their lives around with the help of a doctor or a therapist, whatever you want to call it. I saw people get their jobs back, get their lives back, get their husband or wife back, get their kids back, be able to go from rock bottom to build themselves up through the help of psychiatrists. It was amazing. It sort of fulfilled my dream of being able to help people at their lowest and follow them along their journey and help them improve their lives through various ways. I had passion for it, and I still have passion for it. It was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life to pursue psychiatry. And it wasn't like I fell in love immediately. It wasn't like I had this huge epiphany. It took time, and I really followed my gut and my heart. And what I would go home and think, did I have a good day? Did I actually enjoy my day? Do I actually want to go back tomorrow and continue to learn? If you start feeling like that in med school on a rotation, that's a good sign. If you're dreading waking up in the morning and going to the operating room and getting screamed at, probably don't become a surgeon. Y'all are the best. These questions are so amazing. Any tips or advice for anyone struggling to make enough money to pay for med school? Sheesh, I feel that. I mean, look, I was privileged in that my parents helped me apply to medical school, because applying to medical school is extremely expensive. Now, I also assisted in that. I drove Uber. I worked as an ophthalmology technician. I worked at a bar. I worked as a caterer for a restaurant. I mean, I busted my butt to make money, but they were able to assist me a little bit. So I got to say that, thank you to my parents for being able to help with the application process. But, they weren't able to help pay for medical school itself. The tuition, who could? The tuition is $60,000 a year, and it's only growing. I took out loans, heavy loans. And a lot of people I know did the same. That's okay. How else are you going to do it? In my opinion, it's very difficult to work in medical school. In fact, I think sometimes working could take away from what you could be learning in med school. And I would really advise you, if possible, not to work. And I know that means take on additional loans. And I know those loans have high interest rates. I know. I'm paying them back as we speak. I know. But one day, those loans will be gone. You will be a attending physician or a physician in any way that you want to be, and you'll be making enough money that you won't worry about those loans anymore. I know it's not the best advice. I wish there was an easier way or a better way, but unfortunately in America right now, the only way to do it, from what I understand, is if your parents can't pay for your med school, you take out loans, and you're in good company. If I'm gonna get out of debt, you're gonna get out of debt. I promise you. All right, I'm a year away from finishing high school. I want to become a doctor, maybe a surgeon, and I know that it will take a lot of work and energy and effort. Facts. I also know medicine is a very competitive field in general, and I wouldn't consider myself a very competitive person. So my question is, do you personally find it very competitive, or is it more that you find your people and you ride through the journey together? Great question for a high school student. This is super insightful. It can be competitive, but you also do find your people and ride through the journey of medical school and pre-med and residency together. That's what makes it doable. If you didn't have people to ride through the journey with, it would be almost impossible. I'm a competitive person, but I'm also a collaborative person. I like to work with other people, and medical school was surprisingly a place where people work together a lot. You have an anatomy group, you have study groups, you do small groups, you're constantly working with, teaching, and learning from other students. It's less competitive than I thought. It is not like law school where they'll say at the beginning, look to the right of you, look to the left of you. One of you will not be here by the end of the school year, whatever they say. It's not like that. From my opinion, from my understanding, once you are in medical school, the odds of you completing medical school are very high. I, in fact, only know a handful of people that didn't finish, and some of them didn't finish for reasons that they chose to. They didn't want to become a doctor, and that's totally okay. Don't worry about not being so competitive. You're going to have to work extremely hard to get to medical school. And once you're in med school, you got to work even harder, but you don't have to compete necessarily with other people. You compete with yourself. And if you're okay with that, then you'll make a great med student and a great doctor. I want to be a psychiatrist too. I'm currently a third-year med student in Bangladesh. Awesome. The problem is my family isn't very supportive of me being a psychiatrist. They want me to become something else. Can you tell me how I can convince them? I can't tell you how you can convince them because I think it's different for everybody, and every family has a different perception of a psychiatrist. I feel you. In the United States, there is a stigma against psychiatrists, although it is improving. Psychiatrists are sometimes called shrinks, and at first when I chose psychiatry, I had people that kind of looked at me sideways. I spent 22 years in school. I took out hundreds of $1,000s in debt. Why would you become a psychiatrist? Why not? Why not be a mental health doctor and help people at their rock bottom? Be able to save people's lives daily. Why not? Being a psychiatrist is awesome. I've seen it firsthand. I would much rather be a psychiatrist than any other medical profession, and that's not to say anything negative about those professions. I think once your family realizes how passionate you are about mental health and about helping people with their mental health and helping people live better lives, they will be more understanding and supportive of you. And if not, oh well, it's your passion and it's your job and you can make it happen. I hope that one day they will be supportive of you. Great question. Great question. How did you know you wanted to be a doctor at such a young age? I always knew I was going to be a doctor. As long as I can remember, I was probably 3 or 4. I went to my pediatrician. I remember seeing what my pediatrician does. I remember him making people feel better, giving them treatments when they're sick, when they are desperate for help, and him being there for these people. I always wanted to be a doctor. I would see it in the movies and shows, and they were like superheroes in my mind. They help people at their lowest. There's nothing better than that. I remember, even in first, second grade when we would have career day, or when people would ask me what I want to be when I grow up, I would always say doctor. Nobody in my family was a doctor. Nobody is a doctor. I'm the first doctor. Becoming a doctor was incredibly difficult, but in the face of all of the failure that I ever experienced, from being denied by 25 med schools to applying multiple times to medical school, taking the MCAT multiple times, I always knew that I was going to become a doctor, and I would have continued to go. I would have kept trying, and no matter what it took. I was working odd jobs to make the money to apply again. I was studying so hard, weekends, 60, 70 hours a week. I was grinding, and I never stopped, and I became a doctor, and I'm so proud of myself for doing that, and you can do it too. All right, you got to the end of the video. Thank you for staying this long. I'm gonna answer this question here. Is becoming a doctor worth it? Has it been worth it? So let me preface it with, I've wanted to be a doctor for as long as I can remember. I never wanted to be anything else in life. I went to school for 22 years. I earned 3 degrees. I put in tens of thousands of hours towards this goal. And last year I became a resident doctor. So honestly, has it been worth it? Yes. As a doctor, I get to provide hope to people in their darkest moments. I help people rebuild their lives. It's honestly a dream job. but it is not perfect by any means. Medical training has been eye-opening to say the least. It's hard to explain the culture of medical training, which is pre-med, med school, residency, fellowship, unless you've been through it or you've seen it yourself. I use my platform to expose the problems that I've seen during training in hopes of shifting the culture in a more compassionate direction. If you have dreams of becoming a doctor or really any healthcare professional, do not give up. I know what it's like to spend 14 hours on a Saturday in the library. I know what it's like to get rejected by more med schools than you can count on both hands and feet. I know what it's like to work in toxic environments with toxic people who make you question if you made the right choice. You are making the right choice. You can get through anything, and you can become whatever you want to be in life. Life is way too short to sit back and wonder, what if? What if I went for it? What if I followed my dreams? I believe in you. I'd bet on you, and I'm so proud of how far you've come. Keep going. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, hit the subscribe button, comment what kind of video you want to see next, or comment any questions you have, and I'll try to get to it. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you.